Let's go ahead, get into this second segment, which is talking about the Vikings going up against the Rams. Now, I will say this playoff game was very, very surprising. Now, I did not expect the Rams to win in this one, and I also did not expect them to win by so much. So, the final score of this game was 9-27, and the Vikings, they only scored one touchdown throughout the entirety of this game, which is obviously very embarrassing for a team that had as good of a regular season as they did. This is almost like um, I wouldn't say like a repeat of what happened to them against the Giants, but considering the fact that they were favorites in both of those games, it is a little bit of a repeat. They have a great regular season and they go into the playoffs expecting high hopes, and here they go collapsing once again. The only touchdown that they scored was in the third quarter, and by then the game was more or less over. They messed up on the 2-point conversion, which is why they only have 9 points to show for it instead of having 10. And it was really like a really bad game for the Vikings, and at literally the worst times to go completely stagnant and like fall flat on their face. I mean, the Rams, they opened up this game with a touchdown. Then the Vikings couldn't do anything. They had to punt. Then the Rams answered that with a field goal to make the score 10-0, which the Vikings responded to with a field goal to make the score 3-10. And, the stage right there was already set for a really close game. But then Sam Darnold threw an interception, which was which was honestly a really bad interception. But that's Sam Darnold. Then the Rams, they couldn't capitalize on the interception, so they punted. But then they ended up fumbling the ball. The Vikings fumbled the ball, which resulted in the Rams taking that fumble all the way to the house and making the score 17-3. Then the Vikings turned the ball over on downs, which the Rams capitalized on with a touchdown drive to make the score 24-3 going into the second half. And the Vikings, they opened it up punting, which the Rams responded with another field goal to make the score 27-3, and that was when the Vikings scored their only touchdown, where they then proceeded to punt or turn the ball over on downs. This was a very embarrassing game for the Vikings in this one. Sam Darnold ended up taking 9 sacks and losing 80-plus yards. That was really, really bad. And since I am going to do takeaways from every single playoff game, I might as well start with this one. One takeaway that I have from this game is that you simply cannot trust Sam Darnold. And it's really that simple, because Sam Darnold, he was reliable all throughout the regular season. Here comes a very important game, and he just completely lays an egg, for lack of a better term. And this also might affect the Vikings' decision to keep him, and it might also affect on how many teams are actually interested in acquiring him. Now, the amount of money that Sam Darnold was projected to make would be for 4 years, and he would be making $218 million. And now, obviously, after this performance, I assume that total is going to go down a lot, because I don't think many people are going to value him at $218 over the span of 4 years. This performance really messed up his contract chances, in my opinion, because if he would have played well in this game, then you could make an argument, and he could make an argument that he should be making more money. But now that he sort of laid an egg in this one and played really bad, he made some really poor decisions, like holding on to the ball a little bit longer than he needed to. Granted, it's not all his fault, as the offensive line couldn't really help Sam Darnold in the slightest. But again, if you know that you're going to that your offensive line is giving off a lot of pressure, then holding on to the ball for a long time is like the last thing that you want to do. And he continued doing that for most of the game. I mean, seriously, giving up 9 sacks, that's like Sam Darnold going right back down to how he was on the Jets, where we know how he was on the Jets. He was absolutely horrible. And this is sort of him regressing back into that nature and holding on to the ball a little bit too long. Granted, obviously, you do have to give credit to the Rams and their defense for being able to get to Sam Darnold and affect him as often as they did. But still, holding onto the ball like that is never good. It's also one of the biggest problems that people have with Shedeur Sanders, and one of the biggest things that sort of affects his draft slots, mainly because, again, Shedeur, he holds onto the ball a lot, and that leaves him open to getting pressured a lot. So you want a quarterback that knows when to hold onto the ball and when to throw it away, not giving up a bunch of yards like how Sam Darnold did in this game. Now, the Rams in this one, they played very well on the offensive side of the ball. Matthew Stafford recorded 209 yards and 2 touchdowns. On the ground, Kyren Williams ended up recording 76 yards on the ground. Now, the passing game was a lot better than the running game in this one for the Rams, but really the biggest story was their defense and their ability to get to Sam Darnold as quickly as they did. Now, the receivers, there was nobody really standing out. Like, Puka Nacua didn't really have an outstanding game that stood out on the box scores. Neither did Cooper Kupp in this one. They both played mediocre, and they basically both just did what they needed to do. The best receiver for the Rams was Tyler Higbee in this one, who recorded 58 yards on 5 receptions. He was targeted 5 times. Now, Puka Nacua, he was targeted way more times, but he also ended with 5 receptions and 44 yards on the day. Cooper Kupp was only targeted once, and still he made it count, grabbing a total of 29 receiving yards on 1 reception. So again, that's pretty solid. But again, the receiving game throughout most of the Rams roster was rather even. Now, on the Vikings, Justin Jefferson did not have a historic game like how I thought he was going to have. I thought he would put up some really good numbers. He only put up 58 receiving yards on 5 receptions, so it wasn't that bad. But again, for somebody as talented as Justin Jefferson, you would assume that he would have a really good receiving game, maybe getting around 70 receiving yards, or at the very least 85 receiving yards, something like that, and also recording a touchdown, which are both things that he did not do in this game. And again, this game was really just down to Sam Darnold turning back into Sam Darnold. I said that Sam Darnold was one of the things that I feared was going to hold the Vikings back, and one of the biggest weaknesses that the Vikings have going into the postseason. And it turns out that this game was the straw that broke the camel's back, and it was the worst time for Sam Darnold to play this bad. And think about it, the Vikings, they went from being the number 1 seed in the entirety of the NFC and being able to get a first round bye and probably be in a better situation right now. They went from being a team that was worthy of a first round bye to being eliminated in the first round of the postseason. And this was also around the time where people were really questioning why the playoff format was structured the way that it was, because a lot of Vikings fans were making a big hissy fit about how they were 14-3, but they still had to go on the road for a wild card game, compared to the Rams, who are at 10-7, and they have the home field advantage in this particular matchup. And obviously we know that it's because of divisions, but a lot of fans were wondering what the purpose of having divisions really were. And I personally think that divisions are really good in football. I think rewarding the team that is able to dominate in their respective division is something that should always be done. And if you just so happen to play a team that has a worse record than you, but you don't have home field advantage, that's just tough. You should have tried to win in your division, and really, it sort of backfired on the people that were saying this, because, okay, here the Vikings are playing a team that on paper is worse than them, and a team that has a worse record than them. They should win easily, but here they are on a neutral site, because remember, this game was supposed to be played in Los Angeles, but because of the fires, they were unable to play in Los Angeles, so this game was at a neutral site, and they still ended up losing. So it really shows that being the leader of your division, well, not so much that it matters, but that you can't just brush a team off to the side just because they have a worse record than you. You can't do that. This is a game where anything can happen. So that's all that I really have in the second segment. So now we're going to go into the third segment where I give one takeaway from each and every playoff game that already took place. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned if you guys are interested.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.